how do you best engage with your spouse to ensure that you're not stressing them out with the things that you're dealing with on the business side, but also like give them the tools to be able to help you to succeed and handle the stress? Like,
Yes, ask, do you want to help me? Do not just grab the person and force them into this hurricane. Ask for understanding as an entrepreneur.
welcome back to the Catholic Founders Podcast. If you're new here, our goal is to create an army of Catholic business owners who are dedicated to carrying out God's will in the world. We use this podcast as a sort of way to meet other Catholic business owners and learn how they are implementing the faith into how they run their businesses so that we can imitate them, the same way that we try to imitate the saints. But some of our guests are all living, at least. I hope so. The goal for this podcast is to be as tactical and tangible as possible. So in other words, action over theory is always our motto. And today we are speaking with Lucas Wall, the founder of Alumm.ai. That's Alma, ALMMA.ai. In essence, he's building a marketplace for people to buy and sell AI agent services. If you're not familiar with what that is, we'll explain it in a bit. But basically think of it as mini AIs that help you do specific tasks. He's been building companies for over 15 years, and so he has a lot of lessons to share, as you will see in the episode. And today we spent a lot of our time talking about how the change of eras being caused by AI is affecting the world and affecting entrepreneurs. We also talk about the importance of Catholics being involved and engaged heavily in this transition and why that's so important in order to maintain the dignity of the human person. And then we discussed how to best engage your spouse as an entrepreneur, when to talk to them, how to engage with them to make sure that they're helping you out, but you're not stressing them out. There's a lot of very interesting insights there. And again, he's been doing this for 15 years, so he's got a little bit of experience. And then we discuss how to de-risk your startup or your business idea so that you actually get started. A lot of really common misconceptions. I will also add that during our rapid fire questions section, it actually ended up being a lot deeper than usual. So I would definitely recommend sticking around till the end so you can hear some of those parts. Before the show does start, if you are looking for a community of other Catholic entrepreneurs, join the Catholic Founders Guild today. It's $10 a month or $100 a year, so literally anybody can afford it. Just go to Substack and click Upgrade to Paid today, and we will get you vetted and get you in the community. All right, enjoy the episode. All right, Lucas, welcome to the podcast. How you doing?
Very good, and you?
I cannot complain. It's a beautiful day in Wisconsin. Nice for wearing a sweatshirt.
It is also beautiful here in Vienna, Virginia. So
that's
we
nice,
have
man.
that in common. Terrific.
Good weather for both of us at least. We can praise the Lord for that. So give people just a quick introduction to who you are and what you're building so we can get into it from there.
Terrific. Lucas Wall here, entrepreneur, Catholic, also academic lately. 30 years of experience. You can tell the color of the hair is not very dark. You can tell from the accent I wasn't born in this beautiful country, but I immigrated more than 2 decades ago. Proud citizen. And I came from Argentina, the soccer-loving country, or we call it football.
So we shouldn't debate Messi or Ronaldo today, is what you're saying?
Well, we can debate it, but the answer is clear. Messi is better. Super simple.
Fair play. No, I definitely save the football camaraderie for later, but I love the play. Yes, it's good.
Terrific. So yes, that's in brief about me. I can go from there. I can speak for hours.
Tell us a little bit more about Alumm.ai. I just want to understand kind of the basics and what you're building there.
Sure. So Alma, it's spirit, feminine spirit in Spanish. Though I played a trick there. It's 2 M's in my company. It's 1 M in Spanish. So, and what I'm trying to capture, the mission and the vision of this company is that I'm trying to help people make money with AI. If you go back to the last several technology revolutions, some people made a ton of money. We all benefit from the technologies. I can pick up a phone and talk to my family in Argentina via social media and, WhatsApp and whatnot. But I haven't made billions out of the investments in those companies, right? So I saw this wave coming, and realized that, I still wanted to launch another startup after having to shut down my prior due to the COVID pandemic, and said, but this time I want to spread the wealth as much as possible. So the mission and the vision, right? Put it simply, I want to mint 1 million millionaires. And AI is so big, so transformational, that it's going to give us a chance. We still have a chance in front of us, so let's ride the wave together.
So in general, instead of a handful of people capturing all of the income or the revenue or the wealth that you would say from social media era, for example, your goal is to be able to get that into the hands of many people. So how are you doing that? Just out of curiosity, like what is the fundamental difference about how you're building this and why this is actually even possible in the first place with the AI revolution?
Terrific. So I put together a marketplace. We're still building. We're building many elements of the marketplace. But when we are done and launching very soon, what you will be able to do to capture profits from AI is become a creator in the marketplace. Come, create an agent, a series of prompts that help non-technical people. By the way, most of users of computers and mobiles nowadays are not engineers, right? Are not developers, programmers. Most of us never went to computer science school. So there's a huge number of individuals who can benefit from the use of AI, and they are willing to pay somebody who knows what they're doing to build their agent, being a series of agents do several things for them. So on the one side, you have somebody with technical knowledge who may want to make extra money. And on the other side, you have somebody who can benefit from the use of AI, but is not going to invest the time and effort in understanding the color and the top K and top P and ragging in all the technicalities behind large language models. Alma puts them together and allows them to transact. And as a marketplace, Alma gets a small commission to facilitate finding each other and the exchange.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a marketplace, like many marketplaces. I think that decades ago we had eBay as the first marketplace. We have more recently Airbnb as a marketplace. So I'm putting together the first AI marketplace where you can trade agents and prompts and similar products.
Yeah. And for anybody who's not familiar, because I know we have a somewhat non-technical audience at times, the basics of an AI agent would be, say, for example, you've got a workflow and you need an agent that's going to help you automate aspects of that. Something might be really niche because you run like a coffee shop or something. Somebody might build a product that helps you automate all of your, refunds or your loyalty program or who knows what. But that's the whole point, is that there's so many applications that AI can do, and you can just go say, oh, this helps me with the coffee shop. You click, and then you do a couple plugins to your existing system, something that a non-technical person can do, and boom, you've saved yourself a lot of money. So that's what, if anybody's unfamiliar with an AI agent, I definitely do some research about it. For any business owner listening, it's important to be able to automate some of these things so that you can save yourself time. Especially a lot of the people listening, I think, are solopreneurs or running very small operations. Right? It's very, very helpful. It's been quite helpful for me too. I have a handful of ways that we've been kind of interacting with it. But yeah, no, this is really helpful. I appreciate the context there, and it's very, very interesting to see the general approach and premise to it. Of we're not trying to concentrate this in the hands of one or two people, but we're trying to make a lot of people the opportunity. And any big marketplace that has succeeded has succeeded for the same reasons, right?
Yes.
Many people get the value, so it's very nice, pro capitalism outcome, right?
Yes, exactly. Let the markets decide. Let the people vote with their money, their time, their effort. What you need to build, not just one centralized big company deciding what type of flavor or what type of feature to decide. Imagine that each one of these agents will do slightly different things. Well, that's democratization of software development in essence. So yes, 100%.
Yeah. So I guess along with this idea, you're talking about two different types of eras where in one you've got, Facebook and all these other big social media companies, but a handful of people had the outcomes, and you're going to try to make other people have many outcomes with AI. This whole change of eras is something that I believe Pope Francis talked a little bit about at one point. And I guess, can you just talk about what this means to you? And when we talk about change of eras, we're talking about the age of AI, right? AI can change a lot of things, and really is going to be very different in the future. So what is your kind of what is your take on that? And how do you approach this as an entrepreneur?
Yes. So let's go back in time a little bit, right? When electricity became a thing, it was distributed in 4 blocks in Manhattan. They had to put together the wiring, and it was very expensive. You needed to modify buildings to allow outlets inside of the rooms, and the generators have to be nearby, but not too far away, but not so close. And that was the end of the 1900s, on the 1800s, yes, 19th century. My town, I come from a small town, rural town in Argentina, opened their electrical power cooperative in 1970. So roughly 80 years later. Electricity, you could produce electricity. We all had the machinery. You could import generators in Argentina. Maybe somebody built generators in 1950 in Argentina? Yes, for sure. They were in Buenos Aires. But to get to the quote unquote end of civilization, right? I've jokingly called my town like that, where, the devil comes here. And so this time is extremely different because we have the distribution network for AI. It's the internet. So very quickly, OpenAI acquired 100 million users because everybody on their mobiles were able to create an account and start chatting with GPT 3.5. So this is how this revolution could be monetized, and people of all walks of life in every continent of the planet could benefit from it. It's an extremely big difference than in the past.
Yeah. So this is, you talk about the benefits, and I also am somebody who's pretty optimistic and would focus on the benefits of what AI can do. I think maybe perhaps worth just noting briefly would be one of those, in my opinion, that's relevant for the show is how many people will be able to run really profitable side hustles to supplement their income. They may not completely replace their, their W-2 or their job, but they'll have some side income that they can benefit from for their family. But I guess this change of AI, it causes a lot of outrage. A lot of people are concerned about it, and people are reacting in a certain way. Like, what do you think that is causing people to do? Because they're seeing, these, I don't know how you would say, like very dogmatic headlines saying everybody's going to be out of a job, etc. What do you think that this is causing in society?
Yes, so several things. We live in a very special era. As Pope Francis says, it's changing, but we live in a time where we can all say what we think, and that thought can be replicated and distributed throughout the planet. And at any point, something can become viral. And therefore, the algorithms have adapted to continue spreading information in order to capture our attention to the many social media platforms because they are selling advertisement. So they need our attention to be doing that. So there is a huge amount of exaggeration on both sides, the benefits of this technology and the detrimental part, the negativity of this technology. Both sides are super exaggerated. And why? Because we live in a time where there is a lot of capital behind capturing attention, and therefore we need to exaggerate what we say. If you and I talk here in a lower tone and we don't say anything crazy, we're going to be distributed to people who are sane. But if we would start making tremendous, bombastic assumptions, somebody will catch and some algorithm will go viral for all the wrong reasons, right? And so that makes it extremely unique. Both sides are exaggerating. And the other thing that is quite different is, or the quite unique things about new technologies is that somebody said, way wiser than I said in the past, that you discover fire, you actually can cook, but you can also set your house on fire. And technology has that ability, right? You cannot make fire just for cooking and never use it to destruct a structure, right? A property. Technology has always been like this. AI is not new. It's not that AI brings this unique quality that all of a sudden can make people jobless, and every other technology in the past was only good or only bad. So keep those things in mind, right? Is that every technology has this ability to be negative or positive. Plus, we live in a time when if we exaggerate, we are more, quote unquote, more successful, right?
Yeah.
And makes this entire thing very unique.
What do you think about the fact that, I think especially white collar workers were, typically used to being, I believe, effectively the king thinkers, right? We were the people who did the thinking. And now it seems that in many cases, AI has now taken away some of the monopoly around being thinkers, and that's causing people to really kind of question their value. Do you have any perspectives on what that's leading to for society in general? Like, is that a good thing that they're actually questioning their value? As somebody who's more than just a thinking machine.
Yes, several thoughts come to that. I come from a blue collar background, and therefore it's like, okay, now history is giving a taste of what a lot of people have suffered in the past, right? Displacement threat, lower wages, and so on and so forth. So one of my instinct reactions was like, all right, we all know how bad it is to be displaced by a machine now. But that's just a lot of irony and sarcasm from my side. More seriously, a couple of things, right? If a machine can replicate your thinking, maybe your thinking needs upgrade. So I read that as a challenge to a lot of us academics, that we academics feel very threatened by students cheating. And I read somewhere, well, if my exams can be broken by ChatGPT, then my exams are not testing human thinking, are too mechanical, are too shallow. There is something that I have to do with my exams better because a machine can now break it. And I don't buy that the machine is super powerful and thinks way more than any other human being. The thinking ability of humans is quite deep. And yes, these machines seem to be doing part of it, but not quite there yet. So I think there is another series of arguments to be made here. We tend to think that most of our work is quite mechanical and quite repetitive. And we tend to think that every accountant does the same thing. In essence, yes, that's what they're called, accountants. But there are accountants that also lend business advice to their clients. There are accountants who are extremely good at doing taxes. Are accountants who can very quickly do forecasting for their business owners when they realize that something is not going on, is not going well in the business. And they can tell the accountant, the business owner, hey, listen, I've been checking your numbers and things are not going well. Do you have contingency plans and so on and so forth? Human thinking is not going to be fully replaced by these machines. If it is, it's because you're doing very poor thinking. And so it is a time to be truly human and creative. The more creative you are in your ability to help others, whatever side of the white collar professions you are, the better, right? I don't like doing tedious work. That's one of the main reasons why I became an entrepreneur. I don't like going to the office for 9, 10 hours, 11 hours and do the exact same work every time. I want to feel alive. I want to be challenged. So perhaps that's a way to take it, right? So, but I'm an eternal optimistic.
Mm-hmm.
I want to think that things are going to work out. I'm a faithful person, right? So I always find the glass half full. Yeah, that's my take.
Yeah, I do think it'll be fascinating to see how the masses respond to this because I think from a Catholic social teaching perspective, there's a lot of discussion right now around AI and the value of human work. Right, we've already talked about human work a lot in the past, 80 to 100 years, but now we're talking also a lot about people say, oh, we're going to create AGI, and a lot of people, I think. Even Sam Altman admitted to this recently that that's not really going to happen, and it's really because we're starting to recognize the true value of humanity, and I think that that has been something that's been lost, but through AI kind of becoming a sort of challenger on the scene, it might be forcing people to ask themselves the right question around, what is their value as a human, right? Is it just their work? Is it just their knowledge? Or is there something intrinsic in nature to being human that is valuable, right? And why are people getting so upset about it in the first place? Because there's some intrinsic value to us as humans, right? Because we are created in the image and likeness of God.
Yes, exactly right. The moment we allow machines to take our dignity is when we lost the entire discussion. Dignity is exactly as you describe it. It's God given and it's also universal and absolute. So every human has it and it's complete. It's not partial. It's not that I deserve dignity just only when I think that Messi is the best. But if I would think Ronaldo is the best, I am not worthy of dignity. No, it's absolute, it's universal. Everybody deserves it. And that speaks a lot to what type of things we build with this. If we create products that respect the dignity of others, we are on the right track. Not everything is going to be built like that. We have seen horrendous applications and horrendous impacts of generative AI. We've seen people going into tremendous psychotic breaks, and we've seen people committing suicide because of AI, or AI was part of the conversation of the reality in those moments, right? So it's not a completely rosy type of positive outlook that I have, but we do have concepts, we do have very strong pillars to build a better reality. We live in a unique time because the Catholic Church has been pondering about this for millennia. If there is a few institutions on the planet, we are one of them. I don't know which ones are the other ones at the moment. I haven't taken time to think about it, but I can tell you we have a huge repository of knowledge as to what does it mean to be human.
Yeah, yeah,
Why do
absolutely.
we deserve respect? And where does the reserve come from? I teach in secular environments, and I don't need to explain Imago Dei. I don't need to cite Genesis, where it comes from, to explain to my non-Catholic students, listen, dignity has these qualities. It's basically about respect. I can teach you about respect. You need to self-respect. You need to respect the others, and you want somebody else to respect you, right? So 3 levels, 3 ways of thinking about this. It's absolute, it's universal. You mentioned all those 5 elements about dignity and respect, and everybody accepts it, regardless their faith. So it's not that complicated. The challenge comes when monetary incentives cultural pressures come into place, and then you start forgetting that, well, the other guy who thinks completely different to me, it's also worthy of my respect. So the challenge is in front of us, but we have the tools, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that it's very helpful because again, I am the part of the reason I'm highly optimistic about a lot of these things. And I think that this might be helpful to share because some people don't understand why I as a Catholic can be so optimistic about technology because there's so many bad things that have come with technology. But one thing that is happening quite often right now is we're seeing there's a huge resurgence in the church in the US, especially in other places too, but a lot of conversions happening. And if you just spend some time on Catholic or Protestant Twitter, you will find a lot of people coming to recognize the truth of the church because the truth cannot be manufactured. You can't misconstrue the truth. The truth eventually comes out, and that's the benefit of the internet, right? And this is what most people had always wanted, right? Was with democracy or whatnot. Everybody wanted the truth to come out of any evils being portrayed, etc. And the truth of the church is true, so we know that. But now Protestants are starting to see it as they begin to argue and they run out of arguments. They're coming to the side of the church. Even Grok, I see how many times I'm not a fan of some of the things that Elon's doing for the culture right now, but what's crazy to see is when Protestants or people are arguing and say, "Hey, Grok, prove this wrong," and Grok's like, "Well, that's actually, there's no way to prove that wrong because it seems like the Catholic Church is correct." It usually doesn't give a definitive answer, but it's basically doing apologetics for us, right? And this is, I think, a benefit of tech. Again, keep in mind, Grok is not necessarily, you could consider it the whatever the based version of AI, I guess, but it's definitely not some kind of Catholic AI. It's not like
Yeah.
magisterium AI or something. So there's some benefits that come out of these things, and I want people to recognize that the more transparency that we can get there, the church will always win because the church is true, and we know
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
anything that you want to add there before we move on?
So exactly right. The benefit of machines is that you ask the machine to do 10 steps, and even generative AI that is not built to behave as a bot and achieve for perfection, right, is generating the output as you're prompting it. So there will be slight deviations. Still, when you ask questions and request to use the source, it will tell you what the source is, and therefore gives you sometimes very unbiased truths, right? And we also see completeness. So if you ask about a subject, it will tell you the entirety of the issue, all the aspects of the issue. The machine is unbiased. The machine is not cognizant of your biases or morality to the extent that we have seen so far. It's not trying to please you just for the sake of pleasing you, like a friend or a neighbor or a family member that at that particular moment maybe doesn't want to shock you, or the other side would only try to shock you, right? So you see the machine telling the truth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So when you ask the right questions, you get the source of it, right?
Yeah. There's definitely some silver linings there. As we go into this new era of things, right? I think there's a lot of people who are just completely, secularized and not thinking necessarily about the human element right now, or thinking about how much money AI can make them. Especially if you look at like a private equity firm or something, people whose primary entire life is really revolving around optimizing ROI, right, or return on investment. That's all they care about. How can I get a little bit more investment? If that means, laying off 10 to 20% of the workforce just because we can, they'll do it, right? Now, as Catholics, we've already talked about the value of the human in this whole the human dignity aspect. What do you think are the particular things that Catholic entrepreneurs need to do to lead in this new era and to help shape how it's created and how things really work in the new era?
Very good question. I think you lead with dignity. It means you respect yourself, you respect the others. There are several indicators very, very early in the process. Funny enough, ironically enough, in business we study human resources. I began my career in the field, and one of the first corrections that I got from somebody was, why don't we talk about personnel? Because humans are not just resources. A resource you can discard, you can exchange, you can improve, upgrade, you can amortize, not humans, right? So language is telling us something. The moment we start believing or thinking people are replaceable, we are losing our own dignity. We are not providing dignity to others. As an entrepreneur, it's very hard. You need to find people who does amazing work with you for pennies or for nothing. It's a very, very long road to seeing some success. And it could be very easy to just discard people along the way. It doesn't mean that you forgive everything and you just accept every outcome because, hey, humans deserve all sorts of, employees deserve all sorts of forgiveness and mediocrity will be accepted. And no, no, no. You still need to be very demanding. You still need to be super focused and super sharp and expect people to produce more than the normal output. Now, you're doing that to yourself as an entrepreneur. But when it comes to working with individuals, understanding why they did what they did, if suppose there was an error, problem, failure, you need to approach that conversation with dignity, inquire, ask calmly. Most people honestly recognize their mistake, and that's where the opportunity lays. That's where the opportunity starts. Okay, now that you recognize your mistake, what will you do differently? How do we all grow from here as a team? How will you grow as a professional? Most people take the opportunity to grow. If you see your team can do that, can give you an honest assessment, an honest answer to mistakes, then you have to be super shrewd as an entrepreneur. And you have to have the best on your team. You cannot afford not having the best of the best all the time, right? But it doesn't mean that you mistreat people. It doesn't mean that you belittle them ever, right? And a lot of times you may get very angry and want to do, but you need to be able to understand that and provide that dignity, even when others don't provide it to you, even others don't provide the respect to you.
So in reality, it just comes down to the very, very basic, following the basic teaching of the church, which is to love your neighbor as yourself, right? Love God with your whole heart and love your neighbor as yourself, right? And that includes your employees, your customers, your suppliers, everyone that you're involved with, loving them and showing them, like, recognizing that human dignity must always come above return on investment, right? I think this is something that we can tangibly think about as business owners here. And I also want to point out that this is not something, usually when you talk about technology, like a lot of brick and mortar business owners tend to just kind of turn a deaf ear because they're not building the next Meta. They're, running a HVAC company or whatnot. But the reality is that we actually, as small business owners, have just as much responsibility to really be involved in this transition, right? Demonstrating that the benefit here that we can point out is that AI can help replace the repetitive things that are kind of demeaning to the human anyways. So you can then continue to invest more into your human traits, your human abilities that cannot be replicated by AI. I think it was on our episode with I think it was with Dominic Tiroli. I think is where it was. It was either that one or the one with Marcellino. But we talked about this idea that AI tends to focus on the really repetitive tasks, the things that are very, light touch. They're not, the human element is not there. So in a way that should allow us, if we approach this correctly, to lean into the things that actually fulfill us more as humans, rather than having to just press the button on the machine, for 8 hours a day, like the old industrial revolution times, right? So that is one point I want to reference, especially for small business owners. So just take this seriously. Don't just say, "Oh, that's the problem of the tech entrepreneurs to solve."
The augmentation factor is where there is a lot of opportunity. I see it in academia a lot, but yes, small businesses also see this. As a small business owner, you don't have 30 hours in a week to write a business plan. And it's not true that any business plan template out there will fit yours. And so now you can interact with any AI. You come to Alma and you ask it to help you and behave as a business owner advisor and play around with different business plans that match your needs, and that will take 45 minutes. And imagine that, right? You don't need the most complex and sophisticated accountant at the beginning of a small business, and most of small businesses out there need basic accounting support. At the beginning, you may not have the capital. You can use Alma and all the other GPTs out there to do basic guidance, basic explanation of accounting. So there is a lot of augmentation of skills. In academia, we see a lot of time, I have a data set. I can go ahead and try to understand what does it mean. I could test some hypotheses. I could do very sophisticated work. But if you run the data set through AI, it may bring you ideas that you never thought of. So maybe instead of publishing 2 papers, you could be publishing 6 papers, 8 papers. So you are producing more. All of it is not just a mechanical repetition. Some of it is pure augmentation, quote unquote, cloning yourself, if you will. Parts of it, right? Parts of it. It's extremely important for small businesses that have limited resources, limited capital, limited time. You're dealing with everybody, right? You just hire somebody who's new to doing part of a work, and you need to be there helping them do everything right. You need to take care of clients yourself, your customers. You need to go pay the bills. You need to do inventory.
Yeah.
Well, AI can assist you in a lot of that.
Yeah, and I think the biggest part here, again, maybe just one last point that we move on to another topic, is that because it can help you augment the repetitive things, you'll have more time to focus on the human elements. Not only how you treat your employees, but also, the special handwritten note that you offer to your client when you finish the job or whatever. Like, all of these small things are what's going to augment you from the rest of other businesses. If businesses decide to go all in with AI, what oftentimes happens is it becomes a commodity, because eventually you start to recognize the tinge of AI on it, and you say, this tastes a little bit funny. Like, I can tell that this LinkedIn outreach or this email outreach is completely automated, so I'm immediately deleting it, right? Just because they may be getting one hit out of 1,000 outreaches and their business is working, doesn't mean I respect the company, because I know that they're not viewing me with respect, because they're willing to
Yes.
send me a billion emails before they try to close me, right? It's like, no, I'm not going to do that. I want to go with the people who have that human element. So whether it's a cleaning business, whether you're providing some sort of service to anybody, lean into those human elements where you can know about what's their kids' names, like when was their anniversary, get them flowers, like all of those things. Some of them, can be you can help do them with augmentation of AI, but you as the human are the one who recognize the
Yes.
human aspect of them, and you lean into it, and that's going to create loyalty with you, especially as everything becomes commoditized and there's so many people who are just out there to make a buck because, quote
Mm.
unquote, it's so easy, right? And I think this is again another feather in our hat for the people who are trying to focus on the human elements, if you will. You're listening to the show, so chances are you're either a Catholic entrepreneur or you really want to be, at least soon. So let me ask you this. What is stopping you from joining the Catholic Founders Guild? This is our vetted community of Catholic business owners that we meet 2 to 3 times a month and have a directory. We have a community group chat for you to learn from each other, to do business with each other, and to develop friendships with other Catholics who are ambitious and who are going through the same struggles that you are as a business owner. On top of all of that, you also get bonus content that is paywalled and only made for paid members. To join, all you have to do is go to Substack and upgrade to paid today. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year. We've priced it so that literally anybody can afford it. We're not trying to gatekeep here. We want people to be in this community and have a way to learn from each other and to grow. And that way we can bring the kingdom back into the world, front and center where it belongs. So what are you waiting for? Join your tribe of Catholic business owners today.
Even it helps you in dealing with individuals. If you have a disagreement, we all tend to be very subjective about the way we understand life, right? That's one of the many things that means to be human. And you can run your disagreement through one of these models and say, hey, help me as a coach here. If you are a coach in this area and you know this industry that I belong to, and you give some of the details, and you can actually use it a little bit in journaling. I really had a very bad discussion with Silas, and I hate his guts, right? And I want to send him to hell. But help me out. And the machine, most of the time, I experimented with this, right? And the machine comes with, hey, listen, Silas has his reasons to have said that to you. You may be taking it the wrong way, but I advise you to go. It's a machine, so it's absent of feelings and emotions. And you can use it to actually see the other side, which for a lot of us is hard to go and open up and say, hey, listen, I felt hurt. Right? When I grew up, I was told you never convey your emotions, you never show vulnerability, and so on and so forth. But some of it is needed. And by having this intermediary here, I can run these scenarios and I can say, well, yes, I should maybe give me some ideas to talk to Silas about this discussion we had. But give me ideas that will allow me to explain to him how I think about this without irritating him, which in real life it would have taken trial and error. And now if I come all angry at you, maybe you're angry at me now, and instead of fixing anything, we're making it worse. So it helps you actually bond with individuals. It can, right, if you know how to use it, and if you go and invest some time in your human instinct is to build bridges, make it help you build bridges and better connections.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about another thing that you have some interesting perspective on. You had said to me in when we kind of first met about how your spouse is your first partner in business. Can you just talk a little bit about what that means to you, or
Yes.
why people should consider this when they're starting a business?
Yes. So we've been married for 27 years, I think it is, and we've been together for 30. And so we're one and only two people in one persona type of thing, right? I leave the house and before going to the airport for a trip, I miss her and I tell her, and she's like, hey, come on, it hasn't been 48 hours. What are you talking about? So we have a very close relationship. I'm super lucky and very blessed by that. When it comes to business, therefore, I cannot expect to be completely detached, my wife to be detached from this with me. Plus, she's extremely smart. She has a master's in leadership. She is an accountant in the United States and Argentina. She teaches accounting. She has corrected my accounting more than once in my discounted cash flows and work evaluating companies and doing investments and so on and so forth. So I'm super lucky also around that. But the most important thing is that you have an emotional bond. Entrepreneurship is extremely challenging, not only the business, not only the intellectual part, but you're putting capital on the table. You're asking investors to bring their capital to your enterprise. And there is a lot of benefit in having your spouse be also part of the journey. So I sense it is not about whose name is on the corporation certificate. If you're life partners, this is also something that is affecting me and is affecting her. So I go for counsel. I go for, listen, this, what I'm thinking. How crazy does it sound? How good does it sound? Allow me to say these 2, 3 things. Is it me? Is this truly inside of me, or I'm being overreacted to things? So I think it's way more powerful to have such a strong ally next to you, because this person on the other side wants the best in life for you. That's why you're married, right? That's why
Yeah.
you take this vow in front of God. And so if that is the vow, why split the entrepreneurial journey? Why separate it? Now, there should be limits, like every healthy thing in life. There should be some constraints to certain things. And so the marriage doesn't become the company, and the company doesn't become the marriage, right? In my case, my wife does do the work of the company with me, but she's very close involved in what's happening, because she's helping me, supporting me as a person, not as a business partner.
Yeah. So what are your tips, I guess, on how to best, as an entrepreneur? Again, I'm talking about a situation where you're not working with your wife in the business, right? But she knows you're in entrepreneurship. How do you best engage with your spouse to ensure that you're not stressing them out with the things that you're dealing with at business on the business side, but also like give them the tools to be able to help you to succeed and handle the stress? Like, are there any core tips that you have there?
Yes, ask, do you want to help me first, right? Do not just grab the person and force them into this hurricane of back and forth success and failure and struggle. Ask for understanding. If they are not fully interested in the day-to-day things or the weekly events or the plans or the mission and the dreams, ask for understanding. As an entrepreneur, you will have a lot of things that don't go the right way. They say that at the beginning, your energies and your dreams are at the top, your success is at the bottom, and as you go forward, your dreams starts. You start doubting your dreams, and your energy starts being emptying, and your success may climb, hopefully, before you lose all hope. Throughout that period, you will need emotional support, and your spouse will be able to provide it to you at a minimum, right? Emotional understanding of, it's been a bad day. I went to the meeting and didn't get the contract. It's not just another day in the office. For an entrepreneur, it could be the end of a startup. A bad day in the office, you still get your salary in 2 weeks. A reduction in force, and somebody else is losing a client in a company. I don't know, seeing your competitor launching something better in a company, big company. I was part of a humongous company at the beginning of my career. You saw that. It was stressful, but you were going to still be paid.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the end of the day, yes, you came back home, you disconnected, you connected with your loved ones, your life went on, right? And that is one kind of stress. As an entrepreneur, it's the end of your dream.
Yeah.
And when you get the contract, it's the best day ever. And your spouse is there, your family is there, seeing all these emotions. Hopefully you know how to regulate. So they say the heights are not so high, the lows are not so low. You need to be able to shave off the extremes. Otherwise, it's a roller coaster 24/7. Nobody wants to live in a roller coaster 24/7. Right. So those are some of the things I learned over the last 15 years plus of launching things and being near my loved ones.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, I think, because it's important that, we, even if we have the support of our spouse, we may not, or they most likely do not share the same perspective on building the vision and the sacrifices required. So we can't expect them to be as okay with the ups and the downs, because to us, like, we accept it to an extent, or even if we haven't accepted it, eventually we learn to accept it as entrepreneurs. I think it's impossible to really build something if you don't learn to accept that. But that could be hypothetically very, very stressful for your spouse if they're not, because they're seeing the ups and the downs, and to them it's a roller coaster. To you, you're just like, oh, it's just another day. Like, I'll get through it, and you maybe get it off your chest, but you have to learn how to find somebody to be able to have those venting sessions, and it may not be the best person, may not be your spouse, right?
Yes.
What about when it comes to starting a business, right? I'm assuming you've had this conversation many times. It's like, hey, I'm going to be going to do this risky thing. So the risk and the sacrifice that's going to be required to do this. How do you go about, kind of chatting through that with your spouse and making sure that they're on board?
Over the years, you learn to prepare to go to journeys, through journeys in life, right? And it's not, I use that image of journey because works exactly the same as if, you decide with your family to go visit New York City. You don't just one day walk out of your house and say, I'll go to New York. You have prepared to go to New York, right? And in the preparation, there needs to be a buy-in. This is why I use the idea of your spouse is your partner. If you're chatting about starting a business, you're talking about using significant resources from your family, mainly time. You may be working full time. I think that's the best way to do it. The best way to do it is to try to learn everything you can while you're employed. A lot of entrepreneurs are experts on their field, but they never sold anything. And being an expert on something doesn't mean you're going to build something people want. You need to know how to sell it. So the best thing to do is to go in your company and ask to be moved to a place where you can learn how to sell. If you like it, then you may have a chance as an entrepreneur. And while all this is happening, you're making moves in the chessboard, your spouse is next to you. And at some point you will have to work weekends and extra hours, nights and holidays because you're still employed and you're still paying for all the bills with your full-time job. Well, that's time that your family won't see you, your spouse won't see you, you won't be emotionally available, you'll be overtaken by this new enterprise. And at some point, if the enterprise goes well, or even before it goes well, you may want to work part-time or stop working altogether. You're making decisions for the family now. It's not just yourself. You're taking all the future of the family in your hands. And assuming that responsibility is a matter of talking very clearly with your wife and with your spouse, right? And so there needs to be a gradual process. And one day you're working on your company full-time or part-time, and it's being very transparent to all parties why this is this way.
Yeah. The experience of going through the visualization of what it will take, I think, is really helpful. If anybody takes away anything from this particular section, it should be that you go visualize what it's going to require. What are the costs? Are we going to have to burn our savings? The nights and weekends aspect thing, all of those things that you talk about. It's very ambiguous if you don't bring it up. So you say, oh, there's going to be a lot of sacrifice involved. And what that might mean to somebody else could be very different than what it means to you.
Yes.
And you may not even understand it, but if you can write down and say, hey, here's what the worst case scenarios could be, here's what it could look like, then you can really have an honest look at the picture and say, is this a painting that we're willing to purchase, basically, that we're going to go and make the sacrifice to paint this or to buy this, however you want to analogize that. So I think this is really helpful. I really hope that a lot of people find value out of that. Let's get one more big topic and then we can go to rapid fire. You have this perspective on the same principle of starting a business, right? A lot of people, Catholics especially, don't want to take the risk of starting a business. They view it as, hey, I've got a family to provide for, I've got kids. I can't go be risky and do risky things to start my business. That's just not responsible. That's not prudent. What is your perspective on, I guess you'd say, making that actually not as risky as it seems and going through and starting that business?
Yes. So my great colleague, Andreas Widmer, has this approach to entrepreneurship, and he starts by talking about gifts. You have gifts given by God, and those gifts are meant to be shared and shared in the benefit of others. So if you are very good at doing something and solving a specific problem, we live in a country that is amazingly good at allowing you to start any type of enterprise at any moment. It doesn't take a long time. You don't need to ask for a lot of permissions. Literally, here in Vienna, it takes 10 minutes of paperwork online and $150 and you open a company. And then the culture here that we have in America is very receptive to the entrepreneur. People are willing to give you a chance in spite of you being new at things and willing to forgive you if you provide value. So with all those advantages, why not? Why not? You have to give your abilities a chance to succeed as an entrepreneur. Now, the other side to risk, it doesn't mean that, okay, I have this gift, I have this tremendous ability to do things, I have the opportunity to do it, I have some savings, let's go, let's jump. No, the way you do it is you slice the risk in parts and you try to mitigate each one of the parts. So years ago when I had a Harley Davidson, I took a course to do, how they call it, defensive driving. And they used to teach you that the crash, this is the way that the police patrol teaches you how to avoid accident. You crash in a motorcycle because there's been a number of things that you've done wrong. So you got overly angry with something and you decided to go on the road all of a sudden, spur of a moment, you rush to your motorcycle. And in the process, you forget putting the gloves. And in the process, you forget checking the pressure of the tire. And now you're riding and you're riding a little bit faster than usual because you're angry. And because you're angry processing the problem that you are angry about, you haven't checked fully the shape of the road. And maybe you're taking that curve a little bit faster. Think about all the things that I mentioned, right? If any of those are not there, if you're not driving angry, if you check the pressure of the tire, if you take any of those, the accident doesn't happen. So that's the approach to risk, is you split it in parts. You say, okay, if I use 5,000, it doesn't work. Can I use another 5,000? And can I use another 5,000? By the time I use 20, I depleted all my savings. That is not good. Okay, so can I make it work in tranches of 1,000? So now I have 20 chances, but maybe I want only 10 chances. I want to only use 50% of my savings. So how do I structure this in ways that I only use as time? That is the way you approach financial risk. Have I sold this type of product? Yes, I sold a product. Okay, yeah, good. What can you do to test if this one product you have is going to be accepted and wanted by people? People are going to give you money for it. Can you test selling a part of it? Can you try to sell it with somebody else who sold before similar things? So all the unknowns you have to discover, and you have to split it in different parts and test each one of them while you're still employed with your savings still replenished, right? And replenishing your savings. And that's a good way of approaching risk. Don't just jump and see what happens, right? Though that's what I did 15 years ago. But
Yeah, no, I think it's a really good perspective because there's a misnomer I think that a lot of people say, entrepreneurs are risk takers, which is sort of true, but in reality, the best entrepreneurs are actually they're great at minimizing risks. They know how to
mitigator.
identify
Yes, sir.
specific things and they reduce those risks so that they only have to focus on one risk. Instead of five, they know, hey, I've already proven that three of these are okay. We can handle that. There's very little risk there. But these two things, that's what I'm going to focus on. And then it also helps you get to an answer quicker because you've narrowed down one or two things that you need to focus on. And then once you've de-risked those, then okay, this is going to work or it's not very quickly. And then you can avoid, blowing through all your savings. Something I mentioned recently in the newsletter that I would just point out for anybody who's in this the kind of decision making process of starting a business is also to just visualize how long you want to give yourself. Like if you have if you know your monthly expenses as a family and you've got so much money saved up, you think, okay, let's assume this is going to cost me, this is my cost per month, maybe add a little bit extra there just in case in terms of your calculations. Say, listen, I've got 12 months of runway personally as a family, so I'm only going to be willing to give this until month 6, and at month 6, if things are not clearly working, I'll pull the plug and go back, because that's a good effort. It gives God the opportunity to really give me some success if he wants it. And by that point, I'll be responsible and say, okay, now I've got 6 more months to go find a job without being stressed out and causing problems in my marriage, for example. So I think that's one last thing I would offer people. But I think we've covered pretty much all the core things I
Also,
want to talk
Silas,
about.
you don't have to fully shut down your company.
Yeah, that's a good
Maybe
point.
maybe you put it on pause and you revisit in some time, right? And you step away and you learn new things, you replenish your savings, you rest, you rethink the business model, you look at it from different angles. And if it still doesn't work, then you shut it down. That's what we did with my second startup. We paused it in the middle of a pandemic. We saw it wasn't going to be solved in 3 months. but we didn't shut it down the moment when we saw the industry shut down. And so pausing is very valid, and is a valid way of giving yourself some rest, replenish money, rethink the entire thing, rethink the team, rethink the product, rethink the customer. And maybe you come back at it in 6 months or a year. A lot of markets are still there. Maybe you learn new skills while you're being paid by somebody else, and you give yourself a second
Yeah.
chance at the same business.
And in some cases, then it's the market's more ready for the opportunities, or you again, like you said, you have a new perspective on things. Perspective on your business is actually a very under discussed topic, I think, broadly within entrepreneurship. Is the things that you learn, your life experiences will dictate the way you run your company and the way you approach
100.
entrepreneurship in the first place. So when you're 20 years old starting a business, your perspective is very different than when you're 50 or 60 and starting a business,
And
which is fine.
you touched on the number one factor that makes companies successful is timing.
Yep, timing is huge. Yeah,
Timing is the number one thing, and we entrepreneurs cannot move forward. We cannot speed up time. We cannot slow down time. Most ideas don't work because it's not the right time for the idea. And think about that, right? It's impossible to ponder. We become entrepreneurs to go and solve everything. That's one of the things I love the most about it. There's one thing I cannot do is I cannot slow down time and prevent the opportunity to slip away from my hands, nor I can speed up and get the market ready to accept my solution. Most solutions are not deployed at the right time in the market.
yeah. Yeah, awesome. Well, let's shift over to rapid fire and then we'll wrap it up. So I guess the first one, what is your favorite scripture or holy reading that really speaks to you as an entrepreneur?
More than a scripture, I think it's what Paul as an apostle did. He experienced the grace of God to an extent, and this has happened to a lot of people in humanity, and the founders of the church has this very, you taste a teaspoon or less than a teaspoon of the grace of God, and it changes your life radically. Thomas Aquinas said that he experienced it, and everything he did in his life, it felt like useless, and he stopped writing. And everything that Paul experienced made him become pivot, to use an entrepreneurial word, from being one of the most successful persecutors of believers into one of the most ardent evangelists. Now, how he did it is amazing. I take a lot of inspiration for it. He went on the road, no resources whatsoever. Hey, that rings a bell. And he started just embedding himself in the community, working in whatever the community needed. That is what making tent means. Literally, in the past, caravans will move, and when they try to stop, they need to put up a tent, and that's heavy work. 2,000 years ago, it wasn't just a very lightweight tent that you put together and you sleep in, right? So he worked, and after working, made bread with people, right? And spoke and talk about Jesus, right? Talk
Yeah.
about God. And his journey took him to discover in the community how the Holy Spirit was talking through him to others in such ways that people were moved. When he goes to Greece, when he discovers that he mentions the Christos, people start paying attention. That speaks to while you're in the journey, you're discovering. That's extremely inspiring to me. I've been to the Middle East, I've been to Israel, I've been to many of the places that Bible cites where Jesus made a miracle or something special happened. And then I've been to Greece, I've been to Thessaloniki, I've been to Athens, I've been to the Agora, which is in the south of the Parthenon. And you walk those roads, you walk, and you say, well, this is where the guy, more or less, right? This is where the guy was trying to discern how to convey what he felt in his life. And this is a very human process, right? So the fathers of the church didn't walk on clouds. The fathers of the church were not absent from all the same struggles that we all have. They pursue this passion they felt after experiencing the grace of God in different ways, whatever shape or form it took. Sometimes making tents, sometimes sleeping in somebody's house, sometimes having to rush, leave town super quick because they were going to be captured. So you are part of the community all the time, believers, non-believers. While you are building your company, you are in a journey guided by the Holy Spirit, right? Trying to ask the Holy Spirit every day to be there with you, growing spiritually while you're trying to grow your business. So Paul speaks, he's my preferred father of the church and apostle. I go to churches and say, where's Paul? Where's Paul? They're picking
Yeah.
him like this.
Yeah.
And I take
Paul's
pictures of
great.
Paul all the time.
Paul's awesome. I guess then next one would be who's your favorite entrepreneur and why?
Well, of course, Paul has It has a part of the credit of funding the church together with other major figures. Elon became extremely, uh, problematic with his. A lot of people just began hating him, and he used to be loved by the left, and now he's despised by the left, and he used to be discarded by the right, and then he was embraced by the right. But if you take away the political persona and you focus on the entrepreneurial struggles of, yes, he had, compared to most of us, a ton of money to start SpaceX, but the amount of struggle, failure in work, it's amazing, right? What comes to mind is relentless pursuit of success and discarding failure as a, yeah, we know it was going to blow up.
Yeah.
Go check what was the spaceship number one. It's a tiny small tank. It's awful. It's ridiculous. When it flown, people said, like, you're going to try to go to what, Mars? It's a town that you're trying to achieve. That is a ridiculous thing. It's never going to work. You can point out all the failures and all points. And this guy has somehow, one way or the other, a way to focus and think that it will be done one way or the other, in spite of all failures, in spite of the impossibility of it.
Yeah.
How many decades we had rockets that we were just throwing out and burning,
Yeah.
and we have reusable rockets now. So in
I think
spite of his, yeah,
it's also pretty fascinating his focus on willingness to take responsibility for the failures. I think this is something most people overlook. I mean, people focus on his hardcore mode and his quote unquote willingness to discard humans, but in the process. But there are a couple aspects I would say are redeeming qualities around there. Whereas like, hey, if somebody doesn't speak up about things that are wrong now, being nice to somebody is actually going to cost the entire company rather than being nice to the person's feelings in the moment. Obviously, as Catholics, we want to be charitable how we treat people, but recognizing that there are certain things where it's very critical that you get things right, and if you don't, it's just like allowing somebody to continue in sin without talking to them about it, right? If there's something that's truly wrong, you need to address it, because if that gets messed up, then maybe the entire company is going to be out of business,
yeah.
and then everybody's jobs are gone.
A few things, right? Because it's such a interesting figure. The fact that I admire his entrepreneurial abilities, it shouldn't, and anybody hearing this, anybody who's still growing, shouldn't just go ahead and admire everything out of a person, right? Few humans have such set of skills and abilities and qualities that are admirable at all levels. Sadly, and I don't want to get overly personal, and much less criticizing for anything, he lost a son at some point decades ago, right? I have the same experience. We both reacted to this very differently. I slowed down and went through the process of sadness. What you read about him, and I haven't met him. Perhaps one day I will. I don't know exactly. Perhaps he will share about this or not. It sounds that he ran away from the pain, and I want to make an emphasis, especially because we're talking to other Catholics. Jesus didn't run away from the cross. This is an innocent guy who's being shown a cross for crimes that he didn't commit. And that is the crux of being a follower of Jesus, that you understand that as a human, innocent people suffer tremendously. Think about that, right? All our experiences. The book of Job explains this. The book was written thousands, millennia years before Christ. And the book is trying to explain what happens, why innocent people suffer. In essence, that's what the book is trying to say. So Job loses everything and then wrestles with God and doesn't believe God. And eventually God gives him 7 of everything. Well, let me tell you, you give me 7 more children, it doesn't take away the pain of missing my first son that died 15 years ago, right? And so let's think about that. You cannot run from your pain. You cannot run from your sadness. You have to go through the experience to understand the grace of God. Eventually, my wounds heal. The process made me more resilient. Imagine how it sounds to me when I lose a contract. Listen, I survived the death of a son. Losing a contract is tedious, it's frustrating. I want to win every contract I propose, but it's not going to break me. It's not going to break me, not 1,000 contracts, right? So I don't know. I wish to discuss this with him at some point, if life gives me a chance, if God gives me a chance. But yeah, so don't take people that are extremely successful in one thing and just make a pedestal in every aspect,
Yeah.
right? We'll
Yeah,
have
exactly.
very shortcomings.
You need to look at the rest of their life too. But I think that's just a very good point. I appreciate that of the recognizing and leaning into. We've talked about this several times in the community of leaning into the struggles and the pains and the sufferings, because
Yeah.
It's the same thing in a way as embracing your cross, especially if you are entering into a business believing that this is something God's calling you to. You should expect suffering, right? We don't, as
Yes.
Catholics, believe that life is meant to be void of suffering, right? So let's we're running over time here, but let's try to wrap up with who's your favorite saint if it's not Saint Paul, and why?
Favorite saint. I have a very direct relationship with God and in Jesus, right? And so I scribble daily. I began a daily habit of starting the day thanking God. And so I read about saints throughout I'm a convert. I converted as an adult, and I keep that direct relationship. So I admire his work as a human. I don't know enough, I want to say. So maybe you discover a homework for me, Silas, which is, opportunity to grow as a Catholic. I recognize that. But yes, I have a very direct relationship. I tell the guy
Yeah,
everything.
you'll
When I'm
have to
angry, when I'm happy.
you'll have to learn more about Blessed Carlo Acutis as a tech entrepreneur. He'll be the patron saint of laptop boys, basically, and everything on the internet. So that's fine. That's totally fine. St. Paul is a great one to cover to mention. We actually just recently talked about him in the newsletter. And then I guess finally your favorite devotion and why?
The Hail Marys. I go to sleep with the image that Mother Mary protects me. And so, in essence, I'm protecting my child side. So the world is super tough and super harsh, but I don't want to become completely detached and a cynic and just a doer machine that doesn't care about emotions. And therefore, I need to be, I need to feel safe. And so I think that Mother Mary protects me when I'm sleeping, when I will sleep, and that's an image that I fall to sleep to every night of my life. And it began years before I converted, when I was going through my family was going through a health crisis with my youngest brother. I fell on my knees and looked and somehow the image of Mary came to my mind. It was like I was praying to Mary. In an evangelical family, my father wasn't a practitioner, but I prayed to Mary that my young brother would recover. And I wasn't Catholic and everything. And I keep going back to that image, right? This amazingly humble woman who accepts this pregnancy and carries it to term and brings us God. Sorry, I get emotional. So I pray Hail Mary every night until I fall asleep.
I did fall asleep last night while praying the rosary because I was a little bit late on saying it, so I woke up with this still in my hand. I definitely can appreciate that, man. I think I really appreciate you also being very vulnerable and sharing these things. It's important that we recognize this because most entrepreneurial content out there's obviously some shows that do a great job of like bringing out the human side of things and the challenging aspects, but a lot of it's just rah rah, look how good we are, look at all the money we made, blah blah blah, and they like to focus on all these positive things rather than recognizing the humanity in everybody. So I appreciate you sharing this, but we've gone a little bit over time. Hopefully we'll be able to fit this into a nice hour episode. But thank you for coming on. Is there any last, I guess, call to action or ask of the audience that you'd like to share?
Yes, share your gifts. Become an entrepreneur to share your gifts and learn with the community. We belong to communities. We're not islands. And give yourself a try. Invest in number one, you. We all aspire to have investment portfolios, but maybe you should be investing in you, become an entrepreneur. The church has a lot of resources. We live in a magnificent time in a magnificent country that allows you to become an entrepreneur and be extremely successful and grow with your family, with your spouse in the journey.
I definitely would echo that. I think we need more entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for coming on, Lucas. I really appreciate you sharing all this and love what you're building. Looking forward to seeing a million millionaires minted. Hopefully many Catholics as well, so we can build new churches and schools and everything.
Terrific. Amen to that, brother.
All right. God bless.
Thank you. God bless you too.
Thanks so much for tuning in today, guys. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to meet other Catholic entrepreneurs like Lucas, to build alongside, to have camaraderie with, apply to join our paid community, the Catholic Founders Guild. We host regular meetups, online and in person, to learn from each other, help each other grow, and to do business with each other. It's only $10 a month or $100 a year, so literally anybody can afford it. All you have to do to get started is go to Substack and click Upgrade to Paid. Any paid tier would get you access to the community, assuming that you're vetted and get accepted. And you also get access to all of the paywalled content. We really hope to see you on the other side. God bless and happy building.